I was certainly one of those people. I didn't know anything about Ukraine in wine production, well, hardly anything at all about the country itself. But obviously, we at Viinitie, especially with our CEO Tony, we really started to think like, okay, with the current situation, how can we make how can we help the people in Ukraine? And as a wine business, we realized that that's the way that we can help. We can support the wine business of Ukraine, trying to bring in more acknowledgement, just knowledge, understanding of the wines of Ukrainian country. And then we started to collaborate with several producers by somebody who was consulting us who are the best of the best. And then we ended up with Beikush and Shizay at the moment. So it's all new for us as well, but we are here to learn more, and that's what keeps us excited about wines. And I think it's something that we all share in this room because you're all here as well. So warm welcome. But it's time to let Svetlana to speak as well. Could you tell us your personal story? How did you end up being the president of the Craft Wine Association?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very, very happy to be with you here. And I'm really appreciate for your help to Ukrainian winemakers in Ukrainian wine industry, actually, because we suffered a lot for the last 11 months yet. And of course, I'm here to be more, to tell you more a little bit about Ukraine as a winemaking country, because I know that Ukraine is still not really known in the world with many aspects. But I think we can a little bit open this information today. Actually, my way started with Ukrainian wines in 2013. Since 2013, I joined Ukrainian wines. Before, I was import manager, and I created many portfolios of import companies in Ukraine. But I met owner of the Beikush winery, where I'm CEO, in 2013. He just started his way and his activities with the Ukrainian wines. And he came to Kyiv with the wine testing. I met him, and I decided that I need to change my life completely. And it's really, let's say, I changed from wine. I went from wine to wine business, but with completely different activities, with completely different philosophy. Previously, it was import wines that I knew a lot of about import wines before. I forget a little bit now, really. And I even say that my taste now changed to Ukrainian wines more. And since 2013, I'm with Ukrainian wineries, with Ukrainian wine. But I thought that I need to do more for Ukrainian wines, because it was a little bit mess in all this segment at that time. And since 2021, we created a big wine association of craft winemakers mostly, but we have also some industrial wineries in our association for now. And our goal was to develop Ukrainian wines, and not only in Ukrainian market, but also develop Ukrainian wines and promote Ukrainian wines outside of Ukraine. Now we're working a lot on the export markets for all wineries, of course. And when someone asks for my winery for export, I also offer some other wineries for consideration. So this was our goal. And
yeah, perfect. So if we go, to the very beginning, when did Ukrainian wine production begin? And obviously, we know the history of the country. The Soviet period was a rather long time. What was the wine scene like then?
Historically, a wine culture existed in today's Ukraine in 4th century BC. So Ukraine is a country with a long story of wine production. From that time, we started from 1st century of BC. It started in the Crimea, in the south coast of Crimea. But however, in 11th century, in northern part of Ukraine, they started to not only produce but also plant vineyards in Ukraine. And geographically, it was Kiev and Chernigov. It's northern part of Ukraine, and it made that time by monks. Then we can say about the real boom in wine production in Ukraine in 17th century. And geographically, it was all over the territory of Ukraine. Lviv Oblast is western part of Ukraine, Zakarpattia. Sometimes you probably heard like Transcarpattia, but it's wrong. It's Zakarpattia, and we always say it's Zakarpattia. The time also were very commercial, and the biggest wine producing region was Black Sea region. Black Sea region consists 3 sub-regions. But it's a little bit mess, because in Ukraine we call it like a part regions. We can say like Mykolaiv region, Odessa region, Kherson region, but all these 3 regions belong to Black Sea region. It's just few meters of the Black Sea coasts. Then, after the end of Russian Empire, for Ukrainian wines started really awful and crucial period, and just from the collapse of USSR, Ukrainian wines started their revival.
So it kind of went from like quantity to quality, and
during the USSR period, Ukraine was the largest country in Eastern Europe, wine production country of Eastern Europe, but really was not really good about the wines. Wines was mostly more fortified, was diluted with the water. It was predominantly sweet wines, and the market for Ukrainian wines at that time was only towards republics of the USSR. So the big collapse for Ukrainian wine production and winemaking after the end of the USSR was started.
So the first one in your glass is on the left. It's from winery Shizé, who is from Zakarpattia. And this is 100% ferment, aged for 9 months in oak barrels. So ferment we know more from Hungarian wine production. So where does the influence of grape varieties or winemaking come to Ukraine? Does it come from Central and Eastern Europe, or is it more broad?
It depends on the territory, because Ukraine is a country with a large territory, and if we're talking about southern regions, it's influenced by. It's not influenced by other countries, because the winemaking and wine production story started there with Greece and Turkish country that owned the territory before. If we're talking about Zakarpattia, that you now have in your glasses, wines from that region, there are a really crucial influence from Hungary and from Slovakia, because it's bordered with Hungary and Slovakian countries. And in Zakarpattia, we have more than 150 diverse grape varieties, and 30 of them is devoted to wine production. And almost all those varieties came from Hungary, because it's really very close, and before you know, historically, part of the Carpathian territory belongs to Hungary, was under Hungarian. For mint, it's Hungarian grape variety, and there are a lot of unknown grapes, probably for old wine countries, world countries, like Muscatai. I think you never heard, but Cizai also has this grape variety. It's Chasla, Bakator. Bakator now planted more and more in Hungary. Bakator, not Bakator, it's like this Balaton lakes, yeah. And they produce a lot of sparkling wine from this grape. But originally, this grape came from Zakarpattia to Hungary. It's a big mess, because the Ukraine always was something with Hungary, with other countries, and it's big mess with indigenous grapes, actually.
So this first wine comes from Zakarpattia, and then there's obviously, like Bakush Winery, you're on the Black Sea coast, and then we have Crimea, and Crimea has been obviously a trouble for many years, and we have not been able to import any products from Crimea to Europe for political reasons. But a lot of people say, and especially back in the day, it was said that Crimea is probably one of the best areas for wine production. Is that something that you feel like?
Let's say yes, it's the oldest wine production area. They have also their own grape varieties, completely different with the mainland. And before the Crimea was occupied 9 years ago, temporarily occupied, sorry, many of mainland producers bought their grape to produce from Crimea to produce their wines. So when we lost for temporarily Crimea, we lost not only this kind of grape varieties, we lost also 60% of wine production, because Crimea was one of the biggest wine producing region. Even we, Bakush Winery, we bought, at the beginning we bought some part of the grapes from Crimea. It's very close to us, it's just through the bridge, to produce our wines. And our first significant wine, Karakarmen, it's our top wine. We produce from Ekim Kara, it's original indigenous grape from Crimea, Ekim Kara and Saperavi. And from 2014, we decided we needed to change the grape, and now it's Tempranillo 50% and 50% of Saperavi. We dry both of this grape. It's like a passamento method. But for us, it was really a big loss, because Ekim Kara, it's the wonderful grape. And we decided, we considered to plant this grape in our winery for that time, but we couldn't, finally.
So the second one in the glass is actually from Bakush Winery. It's the Artania White. Can you tell a bit about Bakush and this wine?
Yeah. Okay, Bakush Winery located in Mykolaiv region. Let's say region, or you can also use sub-region because it belongs to Black Sea region. Our winery is just few meters from the Black Sea coast, and we also have two other open water areas, Bakush Estuary. That's why our winery calls like Bakush. The name is Bakush, and the story is really interesting. But nothing really interesting. Just the owner, he is here as well. He just decided to plant some vineyards in the area where he bought the family house for him and his family. And that time he loves wine, so he loved wine always, and that time also. And he just went to tour around Europe and visited a lot of wineries. He tested a lot of wines, and he just thought at that time, why we couldn't produce in Ukraine such a good wines like produced everywhere in Europe. And for that time, it was 2008, 2010, in Ukraine was mostly industrial wineries. He decided to organize something very small with a good quality, with not a big volume of production, but really shift attention from quantity to quality. It then was a long story with experts from France, from Italy. They experimented our soils, our terroir, temperature, etc. And they gave us some features what we can use for choice the kind of grapes we decided we can plant there. And there was a significantly big range of the wine grapes varieties. And Evgeny decided why we need to choose for 1, 2, 3 grape varieties. We can do everything, and then we can see, because it's just like for experiment, we can see what is good for our region, what is not. And he started work with the different varieties. Now we have 90 grape varieties in our just 14 hectares. Some of the varieties we have just half a hectare, like Timoraso, we just planted half a hectare, and we produced about 360 bottles per year, but it's good wine. Plus, and now we have Artania. Artania, it's our bestseller wines. We have 3 kind of wine in this range. It's Tartania White, Tartania Red, and Tartania Rosé. All those wines produced from many, from some, let's say, from many different kind of varieties. I mean, it's assemblage for all of those wines. In Tartania White, you have based of Chardonnay. We also assemblage the Rcacatelli, Chenin Blanc, and a little bit of Aligoté. And our goal was to show in this wine how you can play with a blend. It's like a game for us. In the red one, the same story. For me, just interesting to know your professional wine. What do you feel here? You feel here some grapes more than another variety, or it's complete wine for you? Probably can give me some feedbacks.
Any comments from the audience?
Which one? Sorry.
That the wine is quite aromatic, even if the varieties are quite non-aromatic as a quality. Do you know what's the reason for it?
We work with temperature control here, and it's decrease a little bit this very big aromatic in the wines. So we try to complete the wine and show this very integrated wine, because, you know, if it's a lot of aroma in the glass, it's probably will not really good match with the food. Or
so by fermenting the grapes quite in low temperatures, the primary characteristics of the grape come forward a bit more. But yeah, it's to me the wine is you know, when you taste a single varietal wine, then of course you get that clear idea. And here it's like a mixture of things. It's a bit of like a floral bouquet and some stone fruit and citrus fruit. It's like a mixed, but there is a lot of aromatics in this wine. I agree. Yeah.
I feel here a little bit of touch the breeze from the sea, and for me here is some minerality notes in the glass. Yeah, it's minerality. Yeah. It's a little bit salty, yeah? It's all because of the sea.
So now that you've been experimenting, I mean, not for so many years yet, but you have these 19 varieties in your 13 hectares of vineyards. The third wine in the glass is 100% Chardonnay. So have you seen a certain varieties doing better, and then you've decided, okay, we're going to make a 100% single varietal wine?
It was my choice actually for Chardonnay. We started with Chardonnay, oak Chardonnay. We did some very similar Chardonnay to Burgundy style before, and our last vintage, 2090, won a gold medal in the Country Wine World last year. But this Chardonnay you have now in your glasses, it was my master's work, actually. Yeah. I needed to compare how people accept the wines, oak Chardonnay or unoaked Chardonnay. And I asked my winemaker to help me with this experiment for 2 years. It was experiment for 2 years. And we produced this unoaked Chardonnay, just for my master's work, let's say. Then we saw that people like this wine very much. And we decided to continue to work with unoaked Chardonnay as well. Now we're increasing the volume of unoaked Chardonnay more and more every year because it's very good for sales. But it was not like our philosophy of our winery, because we work mostly with experimental blends, assemblages, or with experimental technologies. Because we use some special reservoirs for vinification. We use some experimental technologies for method of production. And it's just Chardonnay. It's just good Chardonnay. It's easy to drink. It can be like aperitif. It also can be matched with some food. So with good wines. And in Ukraine, it sells very well, and even outside now.
So you just mentioned that you're quite open-minded to new technologies and different winemaking methods. Do you think that, you know, when you compare Ukraine for some other wine-producing countries who have probably a bit more established placement in the world of wine, do you feel like you have a bit more freedom in doing different things? Because people don't really have expectations when they hear about Ukrainian wine?
We feel our freedom in all aspects in Ukraine, as you see, and in winemaking sphere as well. We don't have any influence from European Union law for now, but now we already concluded this agreement, and in 2 years we will be obliged to follow this European Union rules in winemaking, in wine production, even in grape varieties that we can plant in our regions, in our soils and terroir. Actually, in Ukraine now, inside of Ukraine, nobody take care about the rules. Even winemakers, they say they can do what they want, and our Ukrainians accept this way of the business. For European, I mean, of course, it's not concerning to the analysis results. We do it, of course, we do all right. I mean, we don't have this any how to say it. So nobody can say us that you can't plant this kind of grape here, that you can't use this experimental technology for wine production. We can do it, everything. Now we can also suggest this and offer this out of Ukraine. And I think we will have this possibility in the future as well.
So the first red in our glass is it's a very interesting blend. So this is a cuvée from, again, Chateau Chizé in Zakarpattia. So this is a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot and Pinot Noir. And when we think about the wine world, we often make comparisons, especially with red wines. We think about, okay, Cabernet Merlot blend, so we kind of compare it to Bordeaux. And if we have a Pinot Noir, we compare it to Burgundy. And now Chizé is like mixing both these regions varieties. Is that something that's quite common in Ukraine, or is this just goes to show the point that you just made, that you just do things because you have the freedom?
It's again, we have freedom. We can do everything. We can blend different style for different varieties. We can use different style of. It's all depend on the winemaker and how the winemaker can play with the grapes, with technologies, with aging. So we don't have these rules. If you want to produce reserve wine, you need to age them for 24 months at least. Yeah, but we do it, of course. But we don't have these rules, so we can do it by our mind. Chizai more strict winery compared to our winery. They work with a lot of monosorts wine, but they also do some blend because it's really interesting to play with the blends, and it's not easy to play with the blends because sometimes you can understand that this grape more integrated in the wine than another one, and you need to cover each grapes properly to make this balance. Yeah.
How much Pinot Noir exactly?
In this blend,
10%.
10%.
Yeah.
10%. And you feel more Cabernet or Merlot or Pinot Noir? Yeah, Pinot Noir is more light, but actually we produce in Bekush Pinot Noir, just Pinot Noir, 100% of Pinot Noir, and we aged it for 15 months in French oak, and the color is really deep. It's red and deep. It's because of a lot of sun in our region. We are in the hot region, and the Pinot Noir is not like has not like some light color. It's always very deep color.
Are there any comparisons in the world of wine, like, for example, a certain region of Ukraine? Does it remind you of something, for example, latitude-wise or climate-wise? Is there some, like, when you're learning a new thing, you often want to make these parallels to start understanding. Can you make any parallels with other wine regions of the world?
I would say I don't like to compare our regions to another regions. Ukraine is located between 45 and 52 latitudes. Some regions are geographically located in the same parallels with Italia or France, And of course, we work a lot with international grapes. Our winemakers work mostly with international grapes. But anyway, because of our unique soils, because of our unique climate, because of the sun and rainfall and many other features, Ukraine regions are really otherness to other world regions. And our goal is to promote our own regions and their characteristics. And there is characteristic in the wines from those regions. We don't like to compare, actually. Before the Ukrainian wine production sector started his revival, we compared it before. It was really. But now we decided that it's better to promote our own characteristics and our own regions, not to compare to another one.
And Ukrainian wines are being acknowledged nowadays, so there's quite an interesting story of as well, like getting Bakush wines to Decanter World Wine Awards. Would you like to tell the story? How did you end up getting the wines there?
Last year, it was a short year when we sent our wines to this competition. Let's say since 2018, I guess, we sent our wines to Decanter. And it's always a big problem, and really big problem, because it's all about logistics. Problem about logistics, but it's impossible. It's quite impossible to send wines to London from Ukraine. And we found every year a different way to send there. But not only Bakush, Shabo is also sent. There is wine to Wine Decanter, Chizai as well. Our wines since the beginning started to win some medals, bronze, silver medals. We always sent about 12, 13 wines to Decanter, and just 1 or 2 positions could be without any medals or any high scores. And last year we won our first gold medal for Chardonnay Reserva in 2019. Year before, Shabo got the gold medal. So for Ukraine, it's always a blind tasting, because sometimes I heard that it's politician for our Chardonnay. It's politician situation because Ukraine now on the top of news, but it's impossible because it's a blind tasting. Last year it was really difficult to send wines to London, because we did it when the full-scale war started in Ukraine already. And Stachowski, you know him, he has also winery in Zakarpattia. They are very close to Chizai. Their vineyards just follow the Chizai vineyards. He helped me very much with this problem. He sent his brother from London to Hungary, because our wines was for that time in Hungary already, and he took 36 bottles in his cases, suitcases, and when he arrived to the Decanter hub, he started to open his luggages, and the people with the staff of the Decanter, they were very impressed how you did it. So you just come here with the 2 luggages by plan, and you came with 36 bottles of your competitor from Ukraine. It was a really funny story. Yeah, and so it was like that at the time. I started to prepare my nerves to organize a next shipment for the Decanter, because this year I don't know how to do it. We don't have any logistics now from Ukraine, normal logistics, I mean, from Ukraine, even especially from our region, because my region, our winery is just few, let's say 5 kilometers from the front line, and every day we are really scaring about everything that is going there. But okay, I don't want to bore you with our reality.
No, we can jump into that topic briefly as well. So, how has the war impacted the wineries and vineyard work in Ukraine, and how have wineries reacted? Have you been able to continue your production?
Not all wineries, unfortunately, especially Kherson region. We can say for now that we totally lost wines from Kherson region, but it's one of the biggest wine production region. We just liberated Kherson region a few months ago, and we liberated just the right band of Kherson. But Kherson is divided by river for two bands, and mostly wineries located are on the left bands. Very, very old, one of the oldest winery, Trubetskoy, Prince Trubetskoy, they located on the left band, and this winery was occupied from the really beginning, from the first day of the full scale, because it's just cross the bridge and Kherson, and they occupied this winery, all this actually region and the winery as well. They destroyed this winery totally. They stolen and looted many of facilities from the winery. And the biggest misunderstanding for me, they mined all vineyards. So they couldn't even come to vineyards to work on vineyards, to prune the vineyards, to harvest later. It's an unbelievable story. I don't know for what. But anyway, in Mykolaiv region, part of the Mykolaiv Oblast, so we call in Ukraine region like an oblast, and it's like an administrative name. Part of Mykolaiv Oblast was also occupied temporarily, but we liberated early than Kherson. And there are a lot of vineyards also mined. And we counted with my association, we just now to try to help clear the mines from the vineyards, because we counted with the experts, and we need 10 years to completely clear mines from the vineyards. It's a very long time, and for that time we can say that we will not find the wines from this part of Mykolaiv region and Kherson region. The same story with Bakhmut. I think more of you heard this name of this city. In Bakhmut, one of the biggest sparkling wine production winery located. Now they completely relocate these facilities to Odessa region, and they try to set up their wine production in Odessa, but they lost completely their facilities, their winery, everything there. They just save about 2.5 million bottles of sparkling wines. They use only traditional method, very good wines. They did export for many countries for that time, and they produce 20 million bottles per year. So it's really a huge producer. To make even worse things for this winery, it's not funny story, but it's really unbelievable story. In 2013, they bought their own vineyards in Crimea, and a year later, they completely lost their vineyards because it's close to Donetsk, and it's Donetsk region. There is not a really good terrain to plant the vineyards. So they had some small vineyard there, but mostly they bought from south part of Ukraine and from Crimea the wines to produce these wines. And they decided in 2016 to buy their own vineyards in Crimea to take care about these vineyards as much as they can. And they lost a year later when Crimea was occupied. In 2022, they lost even their winery. But they're really strong. I couldn't even imagine. We didn't have any information from them for, let's say, from the last week. We just asked some wineries who want to take part in ProWine this year, and the art winery said, we want. I asked them in the private message, are you really want to go to ProWine? Do you have some wines? They said, yes, we relocated some wines before, but now we set up our wine production in Odessa region. We find the new, it's not the same that we had in Bakhmut, but we find new cellars, and we find new vineyards, and we want to continue our production.
That's perseverance and resilience. That's amazing.
I can also say that we lost at the beginning of the full-scale war several wineries in Mariupol. Young wineries that they just appeared 2 years before the full-scale war started. It was really nice wineries, very high technical equipments. They built really new professional wineries. They planted vineyards, and I just met them half year before the full-scale war started in Ukraine. And we just talked with them about my visit to their wineries as head of the Craft Association winemakers. But I couldn't, actually. Half a year I couldn't. And we know that both of these wineries completely destroyed. One of the winemaker from one winery killed. We actually, during this war, we lost very good winemakers, 3 of them, from different regions, from different wineries. One very young and very, let's say, promising winery from north part of Ukraine, from Chernihiv. They started with the vineyards and with the production and really good wines. Because of the global climate change, now in Ukraine you can find experimental wine plantations all over the territory, in northern part, not only in the southern parts, in northern, in western part, in the eastern part of Ukraine. We really have a big bonus from this global climate change. And they decided to plant some vineyards in Chernihiv, in the northern part of Ukraine, and their winemaker was killed. At the beginning, at the earliest beginning.
And it's not just the Ukrainian wine production that's had the impact of the war, it's also the global winemakers. I mean, there's a shortage of glass because there's a huge bottle manufacturer in Ukraine. And
yes, we had before 2 big plants. We produced a lot of bottles, and our winemakers who could harvest it and who could this last year, let's say 2022, and who decided to produce the wine, they couldn't even find wine bottles to bottle their wines. The same story was with us, but I have a big bonus because the last 5 years I import bottles from Spain, and for that time I could buy these bottles. I could bought those bottles, and we bottled it. But of course, we bottled our wines 5 months later than we planned before. Anyway, our winemakers started to buy bottles from Moldova, and the prices increased significantly, of course, in that time. And and you're right, this problem not only in Ukraine become, but in all over the world as well, because we produce a lot of bottles for export, glass bottles.
so the next red wine in our glasses is your 100% Pinotage. And obviously we know Pinotage more from South Africa than anywhere else. What's the story behind this wine? And also the labels. You can see the bottles when you leave the room. They are presented at the back. So also the labels have these birds. Can you tell the story about them?
We have several bottles. We have a range that we name Beikush. From this range, now you had already Chardonnay, and now we move to Pinotage. And we have also in this range Alvarinho and Tiltikuruk, our indigenous grape. All these bottles labels with the birds because of a lot of different kind of birds in our region. Different, we even don't know what the name of these birds. It's about 5,000 diverse birds in our region. It's very ecological range, territory, and they came there. Pinotage, as I told before, as I mentioned before, we decided to play with a lot of different grape varieties, as well with indigenous grape from different regions, different countries. And Pinotage is what's not exceptional one. We just decided to experiment with this variety. Our first wine was from 50% of Pinotage and 50% of Merlot. because Pinotage was really young wines, and it was not really a very powerful wine. But since 2017, we produce it 100% of Pinotage. It's different wine. This Pinotage is different to South Africa Pinotage. It's not so powerful. It's not with a lot of chocolate notes or coffee notes. It's more easy to drink, as for me. And I like this wine because I like more red wines. And this wine I can drink during the summertime when I chill it a little bit. So it's between it's about 12, 13 temperature degrees. It's nice to drink. It's like a little bit colder than we usually prefer to drink red wine.
So have you seen, so we're tasting the Artania white and the two red blends, and then we're tasting some of the varietal wines. Have you seen the international market embrace more of the single variety wines or more the blends? And also, is there a difference between how people approach the wines, whether they are from indigenous varieties like Celtic Kuruk or more known international varieties like Chardonnay or Pinotage?
It's difficult to answer to your question because I don't have really now a good a final statistic, because before we sold our wines only in domestic markets. We had just one export market, it's Poland, and Poland prefer easy drink wines, very simple wines. For export markets, I guess it's predominantly our blends and our indigenous, but unfortunately in our region, in our winery, we don't have a lot of indigenous grape, just one, Celtic Kuruk. And we can say it's indigenous grape variety, but it came from Turkish Empire to Ukraine. We think like this, but we don't know really truth. Celtic Kuruk, it's a very nice grape
white variety.
Yeah, it's white variety, and it's really promising variety for white wines. We sold almost all volume to Great Britain last March, and they're really very happy with this wine. They sold it out in a very, very short time, and they ask a lot about this wine. But we produce only 600 bottles of Celtic Kuruk, and when we considered what we want to plant more, because we had more free hectares for plants, and we decided to plant more Celtic Kuruk. And I guess next year we will have at least 1,500 bottles for this wine. But in Ukraine, it's very popular wine because officially this kind of variety we plant only in Bekush winery and in Szabo. Just two wineries plant this kind of grape and produce the wine for this grape. So another indigenous grape for our region is Odessa Black. Odessa Black is very popular in Ukraine, and with this kind of grape, winemakers works a lot. Even from different other regions, from western part of regions, they come to south part and buy this kind of grape, and they work a lot with this grape. Another name of this variety is Alibernet. It's cross from Alicante Bouschet and Cabernet Sauvignon. It's appear in Ukraine from 15th. For now, in Odessa, we have the own competitions wine tasting for Odessa Black, and Riedel even create some special shape of glass for this wine, for this grape, for this variety. So it's called like Odessa Black glass. No. So
it's a Teinturier variety, so that even the flesh is dark, right?
Yeah, it's crust, and this is. We really don't like to work with this kind of grape because it's very, very powerful grape variety. The wine always very heavy to drink. To drink this wine, it's a very, very deep color. It roots a little bit for me.
So the last two wines are the red. Yeah, sorry, Lira. So it's a cross. Yeah.
It's a cross from Alicante Bouschet and Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah.
made in Ukrainian Institute.
Yeah, it's a
No.
different. So the last two wines are the Artania Red and the Artania Red Reserve. So these are both blends. Do you have any of the Black Odessa here, or what do we have here?
No, we don't have because we don't plant Odessa Black in our winery, in our vineyards. Probably we will, I don't know. The base of this wine is Pinot Noir. Also we have here Cabernet Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc. A little bit of Merlot and let's say the most interesting grape here is Tempranillo, the 6% of Tempranillo, but Tempranillo Appassimento. So this we dry the grape for at least 2 weeks before we use it for this wine. 9 months in French oak aged. All varieties aged separately. Then we married them for a while, and we keep for 6 months in the bottle before we sell this wine. It's
And
also, also our bestseller wine.
For the reds, yeah. What about the Reserve?
Artania Reserve. It's
That's
very
the last one.
very important to say that every year assemblage is changed. We never work with the same assemblage. We never blend the same. So for that I ask you, what the vintage 2018? Artania Reserve, yeah.
Yeah, 18.
It's the last Artania Reserve because since 2019 we started with Loca Deserta. It's difficult to explain to you this name. It's historical line for us. Loca Deserta, it's a step around the winery. It's not about any dessert or any sweet wines. It's just because of historical location around our region. It's now it's in Ukrainian, we call like Dikke Pole. But before it was like Loca Deserta for these areas. In 2018 we have Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Saperavi, and we aged for 24 months in French oak. Some of variety we also aged a little bit in American oak. You have the glass. It's the last one. Yeah. We're very happy with this wine. We produced since 2014 these wines, and since 2019 we came to Loca Deserta. It's the similar wine, let's say, but we aged Loca Deserta even more, about 30 months in oak.
So those people who don't know, much about Ukrainian wine, I would say the most of the world, is there a certain message, or is there many messages that Ukrainian wine producers or the Craft Wine Association wants to bring out? Why should people consider Ukrainian wine? Why should we look into them?
The same wine people should consider Italian or French wines. Sorry for my critical answer, but
no, it's perfect.
Ukraine, it's a really winemaking and wine production country for long story, and many centuries ago we started with this just because of this USSR period, Russian Empire, etc. Ukraine lost their own wine production sector, and now it's revival. Last 2 decades, we revival our wine sector. We start to present our wines all over the world, and I hope we will have a good potential for it. I don't want to say that thanks to the war, Ukraine now everywhere know more than before, but it's true. It's unfortunate circumstances, but it's true. In spite of this, I started to promote Ukrainian wines few years before the war started. It was difficult. It was really difficult because Ukrainian wine region is still unknown in the world. And it was our goal when we created our association to promote Ukrainian wines, to promote Ukrainian regions, to show our unique terroir, our unique characteristics of the wine, to give you, to make you enable to feel this Ukrainian type of soils inside the glass and in the wines. I am sure that Ukrainian wines are different with the Italian, with Italian wines, with French wines, but it's unique wines. So we don't want to compare, we just want to promote our own wines and show you our characteristics through our wines. Of course, we will tell more about our regions, our soils, our climate, and other features that make our wines unique. And sometimes I heard that, this even from Ukrainians actually, your reservoir is really very, very similar to Bordeaux wine. Or it's Bordeaux style, or it's Italian style, or your Caracarmen, it's like Amarone from Italy. I don't want to hear it anymore. Before it was for me like, okay, my Caracarmen, it's compared to Amarone, really a very important wine for Italy. But now I want to say more. No, it's our unique wine. It's our unique, not unique, of course, appassimento method. It's not unique method for Ukraine, but we do it a little bit with our, let's say, with our wine production method. Yes, we use the same, but a little bit other way. And for me and for all winemakers in Ukraine, now important to show our otherness from other world.
And as I understand, also the legislation is it's been recently changed so that more and more producers can really start their companies. And I believe that the partners in the Craft Wine Association, there's more and more coming every year.
Yes, our association, we focus on the amendment of legislation, Ukrainian legislation, and since 2016 till 2018, it was significantly changed. And many of small wine producers could legalize their business. I mean, got a license to produce the wine. And now we still work with this, and more, because after the victory, we need to have a real boom of wine production and wineries in Ukraine. And one of the reasons is because we lost some for a while wineries who before create our wine sector. So now in different regions that still unoccupied appear new wineries. And even during this wartime, we recognize that 22 new family-run wineries appear. This is a wonderful, it's unexpected, but it's already we have. And we work, of course, a lot with the government to make more easy our legislation for the small wineries.
Are there any questions in the audience? Yeah.
Totally in Ukraine. Good question. Next question. Yeah, so, good question, because the statistic is wrong, of course, because we have many of family wineries who already planted these vineyards, but they didn't give any information to statistics. So officially we have 37,000 hectares of vineyards in Ukraine. And 20,000 hectares of vineyard are devoted to the wine production. In Crimea, we lost, for a while, temporarily lost 70,000 hectares of vineyards. So before it was all over common hectares of statistics. So now we can say about 37. But few years ago, it was about 42,000 hectares. Yes, our wine growers decreased the vineyards last years because of many economic reasons. It's not really interesting to grow and just grow the vineyards and sell this grape to another wineries because the price was decreased for a few years ago. I hope after the victory we will increase it.
Leora.
Our friends, our relocated people make it. I didn't, but I was like a co-organizator of this event. Yeah, I sent wine there. Yeah. We work now everywhere in the world to promote our wines because, many people relocated from Ukraine, temporarily relocated from Ukraine, and many professionals from the wine sphere. And they try to do something that can, they try to do their best for Ukrainian wines because it's from their sphere. And we did already some very nice event in Great Britain, in Ireland, everywhere where we can. And now my association, we organize this ProWine, national stand on ProWine. We will be there with 12 wineries. I hope we will organize everything properly because we met a lot of problems for now. Yes, from the Messe Düsseldorf as well. They play with us a not really good game every time, but I guess we will. So we organize, we try to be everywhere now to show to the world that Ukrainian wines are really interesting and need to be everywhere in the world.
Now is the momentum for you. Well, we all know that the future is going to be bright for Ukraine, and I really hope that the future will be bright also for the wines of Ukraine. Thank you ever so much, Svetlana, for being here today with us, showing not just Bekush but also Shizé wines. I think this goes to show how important synergy and collaboration is in Ukrainian wine world and in Ukraine per se. Thank you everybody for coming, and please spread the word for Ukrainian wine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your invitation and for your help, for your support.